Well, hello. Today what I want to do is give you a little bit of information on a tool that is used often in contemplative dialogue, and the tool is called the Ladder of Inference. It was initially developed by Chris Ardress and has been used extensively by Peter Senge in his work in organizational development. The purpose of the tool is really to raise our awareness of what happens in dialogue between individuals. Quite often we'll have a conversation with someone, and before we know it, we're sort of knee-jerk reacting in the conversation. And we wonder, what happened there? Why is it that when this person is in my presence or in particular conversations, we seem to just get at each other really quickly, or we miss each other? So again, the purpose of this tool, the Ladder of Inference, is to just increase our own awareness in situations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the steps of the ladder, and then I'll give you an example from my own life of how the tool was helpful to me. So I'm going to start by just describing the rungs of the ladder. And if you think about a standard ladder, the higher you get up on the ladder, the more unsafe and unstable it becomes. In fact, there are some ladders that have a little warning, don't go past this point. And so we know that the higher up we go, the further from the base we go, the more dangerous it is. And that's very true in dialogue as well when we're referring to this ladder. So the very bottom of the ladder is the word observe. So what this asks us to do is look at the concrete details. There are details surrounding us all the time in our lives. And so, but the question really is, what details do we pick out? What are the ones that in a particular situation that we hang on to? So we observe certain details, and then the next thing we do is we select certain things in our environment to focus on. And in a conversation, we may be hanging on to particular things the person is saying, or we're hanging on to certain things that we see around us before we even have the conversation. The next rung of the ladder is meanings. So once we've picked particular things from our environment that we've observed and selected, we begin to attribute meaning to those things. Again, I think when I give the example, this will be a little bit clearer to you. These meanings would be cultural meanings, personal meanings, anything from our history that informs what it is we're seeing in front of us. From that, we also jump to making assumptions. And again, we add these assumptions on top of personal and cultural meanings that we've assigned to them. Once we've made our assumptions, we begin to draw conclusions. And conclusions begin to feel, if we haven't realized all of these steps, oftentimes that's our starting place. We respond, we've made a conclusion about something, and we immediately jump to action, which is actually the highest and most dangerous rung on this ladder. But we're here at conclusions. We've drawn conclusions, and then we begin to adopt beliefs about the world based on that, based on those conclusions. And then we take action. So let me illustrate this, because this can sound really unclear until I give you an example. So let's go ahead and take this. As some of you know, my husband began winemaking, and I was noticing that when I would walk into the house, I would immediately have a gut level negative reaction to what I was seeing. But I often didn't say anything about it. I'm sure that my body said it, my body language, but I wasn't really saying much about it. But on one particular day, I walked in, and I had been away for a couple of days, and so when I came home and saw it, all the equipment required, the tubs for the winemaking, the tools for measuring the sugar and all that, the hoses required for siphoning, books, all sorts of things, all related to winemaking. I kind of blew my fuse a little bit, and I immediately was very angry. And I wanted to have a conversation with my husband about it, how I was feeling, but it was so emotionally charged up that I thought, I don't think this is the right time for me to talk about this. I'm really upset and I need to kind of take a break and figure it out. So what I did is I took the Ladder of Inference to try to really, unpack this a little bit. So I'm going to start at the bottom of the ladder again. This is the most stable place. What did I observe? I walked in, and really there's a lot of things that are a mess in our house at the moment. But what I chose to select was the winemaking equipment stuff. Okay. I chose to only focus on those things related to winemaking. Then I began to attach meaning to it. My husband must not care about the mess. Although it's important to me, he clearly does not care that this is a mess. And that was the meaning that I began to add to it. There were some other meanings, but that was a real powerful one. If you look at the next piece, the assumptions. What were the assumptions that I was making? Well, if he didn't care about the mess, and it wasn't important to him, and it was important to me, then he must not care about me. So that's an assumption that I began to make based on the meanings that I had associated with the mess. Then I drew a conclusion. You know what? This happens a lot. He must not care about me a lot. Because there's a lot of tools that are around our environment that I don't particularly care for. So, I jumped even deeper into that sense that, gosh, he must not care about me. And, I was very sad about that. I mean, there was a lot of sadness that accompanied that. My conclusion was that I was pretty unhappy. And then, in terms of beliefs, I began to believe. It's one of my assumptions that I believe, and that is that married couples should always be able to share what's going on with one another and should certainly care about one another. That's what happily married couples do. They care about one another. So that was one of my beliefs. And so the action that I took in one particular conversation was that we must not be very happily married. So that was my belief and my action, that I was ready to tell people we must not be very happily married because of all of this. Well, I took that information, and once I had written it all out, then I felt that I was ready for the conversation. So what I did is, my husband's an engineer and he likes tools. So I actually put the Ladder of Inference in front of him, this particular diagram. And I said, I want to share with you a tool that I'm using. And what I want to do is walk you through what I'm thinking, because I'm pretty sure you know that I'm not real happy. And I want to let you know what got me there. So I began at the bottom and I shared just like I did with you. Well, what's interesting about when you're open or transparent and actually spend time with this ladder is you begin to unpack from the emotion a little bit and help yourself understand where that came from. Well, that was really helpful for him. So when we started at the bottom, I said, let me check with you. Do you agree that there's a lot of things in our house that are winemaking related? Yes. Can you see that what I did was I selected certain things? Yes. Well, the meaning that I'm attaching to it, that you don't care about messes. Is that true? And he stopped me right there. And he said, actually, I do care. I just haven't taken the time to clean it up. And I know it's important to you. And I do care about it. Well, first of all, that's the first time that I've ever heard that messes are actually a problem for him and that he doesn't like them. And so it became a turning point. Had I not sat down with this ladder, I would have continued to operate at this level, untesting any assumptions and beliefs that I was making about the situation. And the miraculous thing was, about 3 days later, most of the stuff was put away without my even asking. And I think that I can credit that to the fact that I was vulnerable and I was open and honest about um, where I was on the ladder and, well, how I jumped up the ladder. So hopefully that example gives you an idea of the kinds of things that I'm learning in contemplative dialogue, and perhaps this tool will be useful to you as well. Thanks.